The schedule, the job, the kids. Take some time just for you. It's Sunday Mornings with Dee Daniels on B101.5, powered by Mary Washington Healthcare. And now, Dee Daniels.
Good Sunday morning and welcome to the show that is all about you and your life and your world. And this week we want to talk about buying and selling. We want to talk about real estate. Are you thinking about selling your house? Are you thinking about moving to a new neighborhood? Well, we have an expert with us. Realtor Jay Parrish from Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg is here. Good morning, Jay. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here, Dee. I'm excited to be here.
This is exciting. I always love talking about real estate and what's happening in the market and what we need to look for, what we should be doing. And I'm so, I'm thinking people will join me here. I'm so interested and intrigued by some of the fantastic house hunting shows that we can watch these days. You get all kinds of information from them. Some of it is, I think, a little, reality show based information. But then some of it I think is really cool. And it might be that you've seen some of those shows and you're like, okay, it's time for me to do something like that. Now I need to go to the local expert and find out what's going on. First, tell me how you got into this real estate business. It's a pretty wild business.
Yeah, it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I enjoy houses, but the big thing to me is I really enjoy people, and I enjoy being able to, teach them the process and go through one of the biggest, if not the biggest, purchases that they're going to make in their entire lives, and being able to make it a simple process for them and meeting new people is something that's fun for me.
Absolutely. I can see where that would be a lot of fun. And as you kind of navigate the market, it seems to be always up and down.
It definitely is. It's always exciting. There's never a dull day and there's never the same day again, over
Right.
and over. It's always changing, which I think is good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, maybe you've thought, oh, I would love to do that one day. But then you realize how up and down things can be. I don't know. I think that can be a little crazy. But, you guys seem to navigate the waters.
Right. I think it's the inconsistency, the excitement of that. It's something that you have to be a certain type of personality to be able to deal with that. But if you're smart about it, I think it's something that you can do.
Yeah, it makes sense that it would be a fun job, too. Let's talk a little bit about your coverage area really quickly, because you're in Fredericksburg, but you cover the surrounding areas as well.
Yeah, I cover Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, Stafford. Those are my main territories. I'm from Northern Virginia, so I will cover up in the Woodbridge area also.
Yeah, that's a really growing area in Woodbridge, isn't it?
It definitely is. And even Fredericksburg now being a commuter area from D.C., definitely Woodbridge area. So a lot of people that I work with down here make that commute, that daily commute.
Yeah, and I see the same thing. We hear from people that are, making that trip and saying, oh, hey, let's move to Fredericksburg and let's get a little bit quieter for space, and then maybe they're kind of moving up. It seems that the coverage area almost is expanding for you guys. Is that the case?
It definitely is. It definitely is. You have so many people coming down, all the way out to the outskirts of Spotsylvania, King George. There's a lot of commuters out there. So
right.
it is expanding, from that D.C. area.
Right. And of course, we want to talk about buying and we want to talk about selling, and we're kind of going to separate those groups. Realtor Jay Parrish is my guest this week from Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg. And of course, he covers the surrounding areas as well, as we've been talking about. Let's start off with buying. The local market, what's the temperature on that right now?
The local market right now is pretty hot, especially under the $300,000 price point. We're seeing houses in that price range go under contract in just a few days and at full price offers.
Wow.
And sometimes even multiple offers. So it's really great news for sellers and, a great time to sell. Under $300,000, we have a seller's market due to the amount of buyers currently looking in that price range. Once we get over $300,000, it kind of switches over to a buyer's market because there aren't as many people in that price range. So overall, from last year to the previous year, our area has seen a 4.25% increase in the average sales price, which is great news.
Yeah, that is great news. And I'm just thinking about some of my friends that live downtown Fredericksburg, and they're going quick. It's like I'll see a sign and then like 2 weeks later it's under contract or something is happening. It's quick. It's moving pretty fast. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Most definitely. Yeah, things are going really quick, and which can make it difficult for buyers and can be a little bit frustrating because they find the house that they want, and even if they wait till the weekend to go look for for it, it could be under contract that quickly. So that can be tough for buyers.
Well, so let's kind of talk about some initial steps. I know a lot of people when they're thinking, okay, I want to buy a new house. There are some things that you need to kind of plan out. A little bit of an agenda. You need to have some steps in front of you. I think one of the first things, and I think you'll probably agree, is that a lot of people are looking, if they have kids, they're looking at what are the best schools around, and you really have. I saw your website. You really have kind of all the information they need when they come to you with that question.
Yeah, that's something it's hugely important, and it's something that's really important to most people, especially families. Even people without families are interested in this because the quality of schools can have a direct impact on home values. Unfortunately, though, as a realtor, I can't actually give my opinion on the schools, and I can't really say how good or bad a neighborhood is due to the fair housing laws. Mm-hmm. And the reason those are in place is so that we don't actually steer people to a certain neighborhood based on the demographics of that neighborhood. So what I actually do for clients is kind of give them places they can go to find out that information. For schools in particular, I recommend they go to all the local school websites and check those out. They can get tons of information and details on that. And another great source is greatschools.org, and they actually rate the schools, and you can go through and see the different schools, and that way you can, with your family, make the decision for what's the best fit for you.
Right. And of course, you want to find a location where you're going to feel like, oh, my kids are going to be successful in the school. And so now you've got your kind of map of location, if that's what you're going with first. If you're thinking, let's get the kids as a priority and the schools as a priority, so now you've got your location. That's half the battle probably, but now can we afford in the location, right? I mean, that's another big step in the process.
I think that's really the first step in the process.
Is it? Okay.
That to go and talk with a qualified lender and get a pre-approval letter. This is important for several different reasons. The worst thing you can do is go tour a house, fall in love with it, and then find out that you can't afford it, because that's just heartbreaking.
So true.
It's something that no one wants. So you also need this, though, with this hot market that we were talking about. You're going to need that to put when you make an offer on the house. You're going to need that pre-approval letter to show the seller that you're actually serious and that they're going to take you seriously.
When you're going through this process, gosh, that made so much sense what you just said, because it's like, you know how it is when you test drive a car that you really, really like, and then you're like, whoopsie, I don't think we can work this payment out situation. So that makes sense that has to be first step in the process. Otherwise, disappointment might be around the corner.
That's exactly right. And it is kind of like the car buying thing, but multiplied by a lot and much more expensive, of course.
Yeah. I mean, when it's the place you're going to be in, and you want to be in for a long time, maybe, you don't want to fall in love with something that you can't afford. And that's one of the things that gets me. I was talking about watching some of these house hunting shows and whatnot. Some people, are thinking so big, and that's not something they can do with their budget. That's not something they might be able to do for their commute to work. It really can be an issue. And I know you're kind of helping people navigate through all of that.
Right. I think you're exactly right. And some other things I have them think about and consider with what comes with ownership or other expenses, not just the sticker price of the house, but homeowners insurance and taxes and possible maintenance and repairs that you need to have some savings set to the side to be able to make sure that you can make those payments when something goes wrong in your house that you didn't have to consider when you were renting,
Let's talk a little bit about maybe the type of home that you would be looking for. By the way, we're talking about buying and selling real estate. Realtor Jay Parrish is my guest, and he's from Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg. So we're talking about, can we afford it, and location and that sort of thing. Well, the type of home is very interesting because there are so many different types, and it seems like, if you go in with I only want this, is it better to maybe go in with a few choices? Maybe this is my first choice of a type of home, a style of home, and this is my second and my third.
I think that's definitely, a good idea to have backups, and really thinking about the core things, the core features that you need to have with your house, such as how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, do you have to have a basement? Do you have to have a 2-car garage? What are things that are wants for you? Would you like it to have a pool, but not a necessity, or a large deck? A thing to consider here is thinking about the future. Is the house going to be big enough for you to grow into? Do you plan to have kids, or do you plan to have more kids? The average person lives in their house for about 9 years before selling. So you really have to think of it as kind of a long-term thing.
Right.
That maybe it works for you right now, but what do you need it to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Exactly. Yeah, those are huge questions. And when you are kind of making these decisions, obviously, I know a lot of people are coming to you, Jay, and saying, what should I do about this? And how should we do this? And how should we plan for this? And then you've got all of these big decisions to make. Another one that I'm seeing here on the list that's a kind of a big one is, do we get a home inspection?
I think a home inspection is a must. It's tough as coming in as buying a home because you're buying a lot of things and you're spending a ton of money. And some people think it's pretty expensive, and it can be a decent price. But it's extremely important to determine if there's any issues with your home that need to be fixed, and that way you can have the chance of having the seller get those repaired for you.
Right.
To give you a quick example, I was working with a buyer, did a home inspection, and what the home inspector will do is go through. One example is they turn the AC down. This is in the fall, so you wouldn't actually even have thought about it as a buyer. They turn it all the way down as low as they can go to see how quickly it drops degrees. Well, we were there for about 20 minutes. There was no drop in temperature whatsoever. So it was determined the AC was not working.
Wow.
We were able to get the seller to pay for that, but which could end up costing that buyer $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in the summer when they found out that it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Another cool thing that home inspectors will do for you, especially if you're not a handyman, they will take you through the house and show you where the water shutoff valve is, how to work the electrical box, how to do all these different things, and that's all part of that home inspection process.
So is that all negotiable, as far as like when you get the home inspection and you find out, there are some things? Is it always on the seller then? You can say, we did this now, so the seller can fix it before we buy it. Is that kind of all negotiable? How does that work?
It's completely a negotiation process. So in this case I just gave you, the seller could have said, nope, we're not going to fix it. That's the way it's going to be. At that point, the buyer then has the option to step out of the contract, though. So it's negotiable, but it's a point that you have to get past, which you can imagine there can be some tough things. And you want to think about it from a buyer standpoint, that you don't necessarily want to ask for every little nitpicky thing. But if there's something major on there, like the AC, that's something you want to ask for. And typically, if it's a big deal like that, the seller's probably going to come through because they have to sell to somebody else if you come out of that contract. So
and likely they're wanting to get out anyway. They're kind of ready. It seems a lot of people that are selling, they're like, okay, we want to try to make this happen as soon as possible because they probably have a next step for them too.
Most definitely. And there's time frames, and you've already come to an agreed to price on the house at this point. So you know that you're getting a certain amount for it, but now it's going to be just X amount of dollars less. So yes, they're usually willing to negotiate depending on what it is.
So they're hoping that when they come to Realtor Jay Parrish that you have taken your class in negotiating 101 and you can help them through that. Most
definitely. I'm here to help them out with that. And kind of like I had said before, not asking for every little thing and giving the sellers some things, or vice versa if I'm on the selling side, understanding that we both want to get to the same goal here as the buyer buying the house and the seller selling it.
Great information so far. And now we're going to switch gears and talk about selling. Realtor Jay Parrish from Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg, my guest this week. We're talking about buying and selling real estate. We'll have more after the break.
Now back to Sunday Mornings with D. Daniels on B101.5.
Good Sunday morning and welcome back to the show. We are talking with Realtor Jay Parrish from Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg, and we're talking about buying and selling real estate. And now we're going to kind of switch gears and talk about selling. And gosh, you have to wear both hats pretty equally, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely. I mean, one day you can be selling a house and the next day showing a customer, around to different houses. So multiple hats for sure.
I kind of like this, the selling part is, I think, to hear about it and to watch some of, like I said, those shows on HGTV or whatever. I kind of like watching the selling process. I think that's a very neat process to watch because now you've got to take your house in the state that it's in and you got to get it ready to get on the market. That can be a pretty big mountain to climb.
You're definitely right. It can be a huge process, and it's one of the first things that most sellers want to find out what they need to do. And obviously it depends on how well your house is maintained and what's been done to it. But there's some things that every seller can do when they're getting their house ready for the market. The first thing is really to declutter your entire house. And it can be a sensitive subject for sellers because they've been living there for a long time and might have become really attached to certain things or proud of the decorating that they've done. And, I try to explain to them, that even though it means a lot to them, we want to prepare the house for the buyer and the buyer's first impression. The buyer wants to walk in and instantly imagine themselves living there. So I asked them to take down any personal photos. There's going to be a lot of people coming through their house, and they really wouldn't want everyone to see pictures of their children or grandchildren in there.
Or the dog.
Or the dog, exactly. And we want that buyer to be picturing their own pictures on the walls. Even taking down things like political or religious things. Sometimes buyers can come through and they make a snap judgment. And even though it has nothing to do with the house, some people, might move on to the next house just because of that. I think if you have time, fresh paint and a neutral color can go a long ways in the overall look of the house. Sometimes an owner might have painted a room a vibrant color, like let's say a red, and it looks great. But the thing is, the buyer comes in and they don't like that red color.
Sure.
And they don't want to do any painting at all. So it's important to just kind of paint the neutral color and allow them to imagine themselves, what color they would like it to be.
So basically, I'll just translate that into the real world conversation because he's being so nice about it. Basically, if you have an elephant kissing a palm tree painting, you might want to paint over it. Is basically what he's saying. I mean, you never know, and if you can, I would think if you can kind of get in the mindset of neutralizing your house, just making it neutral. That way, somebody that's coming in to look at it, they look at it like a blank canvas, and they think to themselves, "Oh, I can see this here and that there, and this is where this can go, and that's where that can go." Because if you've got all that stuff in there, they've got to filter that out, and that just, I don't know, I think it does get in the way.
You're exactly right. And I like the word you use, blank canvas. They're going to come in because they're looking at the structure of your house, they're looking at the bedrooms, they're looking at things like that. You don't want anything to take away from them painting their own picture of the house.
Let me ask you this too: when you're talking about getting your house ready to get it on the market, I would think too, maybe if it's an older house, are you suggesting as a realtor to add a closet here or add something here because this is what people are looking for these days?
I think it depends. It depends on what their budget is, how much they have to spend, and what they want to do for it. So some people want to just sell their house as is, and you're going to go through and say, okay, let's just kind of clean up.
Right.
And then there might be some where you want to add something. Or I had someone recently that had set up a smaller room as an office. And what I had them do was switch that over to a twin bed for like a kid's room, because that way someone can picture that bedroom being in there, as opposed to an office. They think office. And
just
they think
an office.
Maybe a bed doesn't fit in here. So you want to kind of lay the rooms out so that they can actually picture it, what their family is going to be like in there or for themselves.
It makes a lot of sense too. And I would think that, obviously if you have a little money to put into your house before you sell it, it seems to me it would work out for you in the long run as the seller. You're probably going to get that back twofold or whatever. It seems that would actually be very attractive to people looking for the house.
Yeah, for certain things. So some of the biggest things that people come into and instantly look at are going to be the kitchen. Okay, that's where we spend a lot of time. If you're entertaining, people always end up in the kitchen. So making sure, if you're going to put some money in, making sure that it's updated. People are always looking for granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. Those are the things they're looking for. Bathrooms are kind of that next thing, like how do the bathrooms look? So those are, if you're going to put some money in, there's some certain places that you want to make sure are ready to go in your house. And
I know someone who, a friend of mine sold a house in Richmond, this was a couple of years ago, but that was the exact thing that she did. She said, I want to put a little bit of money into fixing it up before I sell it. And it was like a small update on the kitchen, and it was a small update on the bathroom. And then she put in a screened-in porch in the back. And it wasn't a whole lot of like renovation, tear your life up and clean your bank account out. It was a little bit, and the money that she got because of that, the value of the home really did go up.
Yeah, you're definitely right. They come in and we talk about painting a picture, and they picture themselves with the updates she's done, the screened-in porch. They're like, this is going to be so great to relax after work. It's just that I like to look at it that way, kind of just, making sure that buyer comes in and is happy and can picture their lives there. And
if it's possible, obviously, as the seller, and you can do it and you have the money, it seems like that would be the best route to go, as opposed to having the real estate guy tell the buyer, well, if you really want this, you'll have to pay for for it and put it in yourself.
Yeah, and that's what you're doing when you're talking about wearing two hats. That's what you're doing on the other side. You're like, well, look, you could potentially put this here. That's something that you can do in the future. So you're right, definitely.
Yeah, so we're talking to Jay Parrish, who's a realtor for Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg, and of course he covers the surrounding areas as well. Want to talk about a couple of other things. Is there a great time to, as a seller, is there a great time to sell in the year? Is there a better time, a better season to sell your house? I would think this is a great time here in the spring.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that most sellers do ask. And the truth is that your house can sell any time of the year. Houses do sell throughout the year. But I think you're right. The spring months, April, May, and June, are the hottest times to sell. Spring is in the air. Everyone's in a good mood and ready for a change. So it's really the best time for sellers to get the most money for their home in the quickest amount of time. It'll slow down some in the hotter months of summer and then kind of pick back up in fall. And then with winter probably being the slowest time of the year. But truthfully, sometimes due to job changes or life changes, you have to move. And you can sell anytime. You just have to realize that it might take a little bit longer and you might not get top dollar if it's out of that spring season.
Now, a couple other things in the selling department that we kind of want to get to, as far as the property goes, and a lot of people say, how much should we sell the property for? That can be a huge question. You probably have a big range to say, well, we could start here and then maybe go down. That's got to be a big discussion.
It's really what everyone's concerned about, right? How much can we sell our house for? How much will we walk away with? How much money are we going to get at the end? It's probably, honestly, the most important factor in whether or not your house sells. A house that's priced correctly will sell this time of year, or talking like in the springtime, pretty quickly. But what is the correct price? And obviously that depends on a lot of things with the house. But of course, everyone wants to sell for as much as possible.
Of course.
And I tell people that you can list it for whatever you want. You have the option to do that. You could list your house for $1 million if you like. It's probably not going to sell for $1 million, but you could. And what it's getting at is if you overprice it, your house is probably going to sit longer than it is. And what happens at that point is it sits, and you lower the price, and you lower the price. And then what do you think as a buyer when you see that? Maybe there's something wrong with the house.
Not a good house.
Yeah. And it could just be as overpriced. And you end up selling under market value by the end of that. Whereas if you kind of would have got it priced accurately to begin with, it would have been better. Yeah,
and that this, I feel like, especially now in this day and age, if you're looking to buy a house, you're looking, like, you're on the websites, you're looking at the listings, you're checking the prices. So you better believe, as the seller, they're looking at the price and watching it go down and how long it sits. And I mean, there's a lot of eyes looking while you're doing this.
You're exactly right. Buyers are extremely informed today. At least, I think it's at 92% now, do their search at least at some point on the internet. And there's tons of great resources out there. So buyers are not not able to understand what's going on now. They really know what's going on. So you're definitely right. They're going to be watching that and watching that and watching that. And really the way to get it priced accurately is to find out what other properties have sold for around you. I always say if someone were to buy your 3-bedroom house for $1 million, unfortunately, it's not going to appraise for that. So an appraiser is going to come in and they're going to look for at least 3 comparable properties that have sold recently. And that's where you should price yours at, because that's what it's probably going to sell for and what it's going to appraise for.
And I think, too, you have to remember that maybe you put something into the house that was so crazy personal to you and it's going to stay in the house, and you think because of that one thing that it should be worth, so much more money than everybody around you, but that you have to somehow fit into that group of your neighbor that sold this house and the one across the street and the one behind you. It's got to be in the same ballpark.
You're definitely right. So if you go and put a huge addition onto your house and become the biggest house in your neighborhood and the most valuable house, that's not a place that you want to be in, because of exactly what you said. It has to match what's around you. And even though, you might put, let's say you spent $50,000 to renovate your master bathroom, and it's amazing and everyone loves it, but you're not going to get $50,000 in value added onto your house. And that's the things that you have to think about when you're going to sell, what should we do? And you don't want to go crazy. You just want to make it match the houses in the neighborhood.
Neutralize. I'm telling you, that's the good word. And finally, let me ask you about this. What about home warranty? Should you be offering that as a seller?
I typically recommend that if it's feasible for your budget, that you do. I don't think a warranty is going to sell a house by any means, but it's a nice bonus, and it's definitely peace of mind for the buyer.
It is.
You know, you're talking about, like I said before, either the biggest, if not the biggest purchase of their entire lives. They want to know that, at least for that year, that they're going to be covered. But this is one thing that's pretty cool for sellers that a lot of people don't know, and I can't speak for all home warranties, but some home warranties, the seller is actually covered for things in the house during the listing period.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I just recently had one where the home inspection came up, something pretty minor. There was a toilet repair. During the toilet repair, the toilet cracked.
Oh, no.
So the whole entire toilet had to be replaced.
Right.
This was covered under the home warranty that they had purchased. So they didn't have to, they had to pay a small deductible, and it completely replaced that. And it covers like air conditioning. So like we talked about earlier in an earlier story, you know, saving you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for just a, you know, few $100s for your home warranty.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And what is that usually? Is it all over the map for what that can cost?
I would say around $350 to $500. If you get the full complete coverage where it's covering the air conditioning and HVAC, all that, you're probably looking closer to that 500 point. But again, it's added bonus.
Huge.
And it's protection for you.
Yeah, and security when you're making that very, very large purchase that you want to make sure it goes really as best as it can. All right, Jay Parrish is a realtor with Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg. Tell everybody where they can find you. You've got some great stuff on your website, too.
Yeah, you can find me on our website at movetofred.com. And you can reach me anytime at 540-735-5564. And our office at Century 21 New Millennium is located in the Westwood Shopping Center right across from Cookout on Route 3.
That's a great place to be.
Definitely. Always good lunch.
And behind the Starbucks, you're in a good spot there. You really are. Jay Parrish, realtor at Century 21 New Millennium in Fredericksburg, going to hook you up with pretty much anything you need and answer all of your questions. You've been a great guest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your emails are